Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cycle Podcast. I'm really grateful to have Sarah with me here today. Thank you so much for joining. She is in Central Pennsylvania, and welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited to hear a little bit more about you and your journey. And I always like to start off with just tell me a little bit, or tell all of us a little bit about you. It does not have to be endo related. What do you like to do for fun? Anything and everything.
Okay, well, my name is Sarah, and I'm 23 years old. I live in rural central PA in the middle of nowhere, and I live with my husband and our 5-year-old German Shepherd, and work full-time in management consulting. I love to garden. That's a newfound love of mine after we bought our house last year, and I love hiking, going for walks, pretty much anything outdoors, and I'm an avid reader.
Awesome. Well, I bet in this time you've probably had a little bit more time to do some of those things you love too.
I have, yeah, and it's actually been a blessing in disguise. Obviously I wouldn't have wished for a quarantine, but I have been enjoying a little bit more free time and time to do hobbies.
Yeah. For sure. Well, let's just jump right into your story. Start by telling us, the beginning. I always like to know, when did you start your period, and did you have pain from onset?
Okay. So I first had my cycle at 13, and I did have pain from onset. Not really at any other time of the month other than during my period, but I had very painful cramps, especially the first 2 days of my period.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it all started. At that time, they were obviously very painful, but more manageable, and kind of those things that everybody told me, this is your lot as a woman, and this is your burden to bear from now on.
Right. It was just this is normal, you have to learn to deal with it. Did you miss school? And then how were you managing it? Were you managing it with ibuprofen, or, what were those kind of things early on? Because 13, you're still in middle school.
Right. I did miss some school, and I managed it with a lot of ibuprofen. And so after a little while, I would say I might have still been 13, but maybe 14 by this time. I don't really remember. My mom took me to my PCP because I said, I don't think this is right. And so she put me on the pill, which is like a lot of other girls, the beginning of their journey, the healthcare system.
Yeah. And she just said, oh, you have painful cramps. We're going to put you on birth control because that's what we do when people have painful periods.
Basically, this is how we usually manage people with painful periods. And she used the word, to regulate your period, which I know is something that doctors discuss a lot. And my period really wasn't abnormal.
Right.
As far as when it would come and other symptoms, except for the very, very painful cramps. And I asked her at that time, I said, I'm taking way over the recommended dose of ibuprofen just to get through my day. Is that okay? Is that normal? And she said, that's fine, as long as it's only 2 days a month. Here's the pill. Hopefully that works.
Yeah. And so you start taking the pill, and does it help reduce the pain?
It does not. So eventually, I would say I took it for 6 to 9 months, and then I stopped it. It wasn't helping my pain, and it was giving me unnecessary side effects. And so I just decided that at that point, it wasn't worth taking it.
Yeah, makes sense. And especially if it's not helping with anything and you're having all these side effects.
Right.
What happens next in your story? You're still having painful periods. Now you're in high school. Is your high school, you just kind of learn how to manage it?
Yeah. And again, I'm kind of putting things together, like this isn't normal. Other girls are not having trouble functioning with daily activities when they're on their period.
Right.
So I get to the point where I have a job now and like can't call off every time I get my period. Thankfully, I had a wonderfully understanding employer, but.
Was that still when you were in high school or now after high school?
Yes. Yep. So 16, I got my first job.
Okay.
And at that point, I wasn't taking anything, no contraceptives, I really had no pain management plan. I just took a lot of ibuprofen, did my best to deal with it.
Yeah. And so then you're just toughing through, like going to school, going to work, and just taking your Advil and pushing forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
At any point, like, did anyone else in your family or like friends say like, gosh, like you kind of knew this wasn't normal, but did anyone else say like, gosh, you have to like miss school, or like what, anyone else raise any flags?
My parents were concerned, and they did what they knew how to do. I mean, they took me to the doctor. We were trusting the doctor to give me the best plan option, which unfortunately is not always the case, especially with a young woman presenting with pelvic pain.
Right.
So they were definitely concerned. And like I said, they really did none of us really know how to handle the situation.
Of course. And I'm sure you were told this is just a part of it. Like we talked about earlier, this is just a part of your journey. You're just one of those girls.
Right.
Yeah.
You just have a bad.
Yeah. Okay. So then what happens, like what you get through kind of all of this, you get this job, you're toughing through. What's the next kind of like event that happens where something's off?
So I am pretty convinced at this point that I have endometriosis. I'm like,
how did you know that? Did online research, or you saw a commercial, or Yeah.
So I'm like 17 at this point, and I've been doing my own research. Thankfully, I grew up in the age of Google, so I could read a lot online.
Yeah.
And so I was pretty sure that that's what I had. So when I was 17, I went to my first gynecologist, and the PA listened to my symptoms, and I had pain during the pelvic exam, and they cracked that up to it being my first pelvic exam. So I just wasn't used to it. And they suggested a different type of contraceptive pill. And because I was 17 and really didn't know what else to do, I agreed to that. And I tried that out for a little bit.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but did you mention to them that you thought you might have endometriosis?
I really don't remember.
Okay.
I don't think I did at that first visit.
Right. And when you were Googling, were you Googling like painful periods, painful cramp, like what? Yeah. And you just, this word kept coming up and you're like, this kind of sounds like what I have, but I don't really know.
Right.
Okay.
And so at my follow-up appointment, I told them this pill isn't working. I'm still having terrible cramps with each cycle. And so they put me on, they gave me a Depo shot. And that worked, obviously, because I didn't have a period. But I gained 10 pounds and had horrible mood swings.
Yeah. But
so that wasn't.
Did it take your pain away? Did you have any other weird pain?
Not pain? Yet. Not yet. We'll get to that.
Okay. So the Depo shot at least helps because you're not menstruating.
Exactly. So it was taking away those really severe contraction-like cramps that I would get during my period.
But mood swings and gaining 10 pounds was the kind of gift you got from doing that. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Then what?
So, at this point, I'm like, okay, I need to do, like, really do something and find a doctor that can help me.
Yeah.
So I went to a different gynecologist altogether. Definitely helpful up until this point. He says, let's do a lap to see if you have endo.
Okay.
And I said, okay, awesome. I'm 8.
Okay.
So
are you still in high school at this point, or are you just finished
no,
high school?
I actually graduated high school when I was 16.
Okay.
So I'm in college at this point.
Okay.
But still living at home. I commuted my first 2 years.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm 18 and I have a lap, and I wake up and I say to my mom, did he find endometriosis? And she says, no, he did not. So at this point, I'm like, okay, maybe I am crazy. Maybe this is how everybody's period feels and I just can't handle it.
Oh no.
So he told me that the ligaments of my uterus were inflamed, but didn't know why really. He just kind of said, I think you have an infection in your pelvis. So this unnamed infection, he gave me, I think, a 3-week round of antibiotics and put me on birth control and sent me on my way.
I'm very sorry to hear that. And I'm sure that was hard for you to accept emotionally as well.
It was because as women with endo, so many times we are dismissed and invalidated. So as weird as it sounds, I know a lot of other women have felt this. I really wanted that diagnosis just to tell me that I wasn't, this wasn't in my head.
Of course you did. Of course you did. And you knew in your gut. That's why you kept trying to find other doctors. Your intuition knew the whole time something was wrong. That's why you kept fighting, you know?
Yep.
So to hear that, I can only imagine that was very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, so you take the birth control, you take the antibiotics. Let me guess, you're still in pain, maybe even worse.
I am still in pain. So I try another gynecologist.
Good for you, though. Keep fighting.
And yeah, so this was number, in terms of providers in total, including my PCP, this is number 5 now.
Right. The fifth person you've had to go to and be like, something is wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm at the appointment and this doctor tells me that I need to take some ibuprofen and not wait until I'm curled up in the fetal position crying. So I left.
Good for you.
I was really upset. And so that was number 5.
Okay.
So got nowhere with that. I called that office and told them I was not happy with treatment that I received with that doctor. So they scheduled me with another doctor in that physician group.
Okay.
So I see this doctor and she is very nice, very, I believe, well-intentioned. And she tells me that I probably have IBS because I explained that I was having some bowel issues. And she suggests that we do an IUD. And I said, okay, I'll try anything.
Right.
So I go through the Iud insertion, which is painful. And for 3 weeks after that, so I had the IUD for 3 weeks and I would get these sporadic, random, terrible contraction-like pains. And I dealt with that for 3 weeks. And let me back up and say the night after I got my IUD inserted, so that night, I was in the worst pain of my life. Like I was for sure thought I was giving birth or something.
Yeah.
It was just these horrible, deep contraction-like pains. And I called the doctor on call, who happened to be the one that told me not to curl up in the fetal position and cry. And he said, you know, mild cramping is normal, stick it out. So I stuck it out for 3 weeks.
Oh, gosh.
And finally, I just said, I can't take this anymore. And so I went back to the doctor who recommended that I get the IUD. And she said, well, we can take it out. And I said, please do.
Yeah.
I can't go on like this. So one of her PAs actually inserted the IUD. So after she took it out, she said, do you know why they gave you this IUD? And I said, no, I just assumed they were filling an order.
Right.
And here, I'm sorry, I don't remember the names. I might get them mixed up, but they had given me the one that was for women who had had children, which is a little bigger.
Yeah. I don't know the names either. I wanted to ask you too, was it a hormonal IUD or was it the copper one?
It was the copper one.
Okay. So no hormones.
Correct.
Okay. So they gave you a large one.
Correct.
A larger one than if, you know, I guess if you have children, your uterus probably expands.
Right. So I don't know if that's what was causing those pains. Basically, my uterus was trying to expel the foreign object.
Sure.
As I go further down my journey, I learned that I have a very painful uterus. So I think that combination just was not working for me.
Right. So does she have so she get the IUD out and you keep it out? Or do you put a smaller one back in?
Nope. She gave me that option. And to be frank with you, I was I think I was about 20 at this point.
Yeah.
And I was just fed up.
I
said, I'm done. I don't want another one. I don't want to go through that pain again, the pain I had the night after the insertion. I don't want to try another birth control. I really don't know what to do, but I know what I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just gave up. At that point, I quit.
You needed a break. That's a lot to deal with, especially at that age too. Like, you're supposed to be out having fun with your friends. You're not supposed to be worrying about, you know, an IUD that's giving you almost like the worst cramps than you already had.
Exactly. And like I said, the pain was so random and sporadic. At least with my period cramps, I would have a general idea of when it was going to happen, and I could plan around that.
You could control it the best you could.
Exactly. So with that IUD, like, I was in Florida on a business trip and all of a sudden couldn't walk. So it was embarrassing, and it was one of those things where I just felt so helpless. Like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah. So you took did you just take a break and start managing back with the ibuprofen again?
I did. I just tried the ibuprofen and then naproxen, and obviously that wasn't working.
Yeah.
So at this point, I still don't have a diagnosis of endo.
Are you having
other
symptoms at this point? Like, okay, so now,
yes.
Like, you normally have cramps, but now does your pain start to happen daily? You're having more bowel symptoms. Tell us about your symptoms that changed.
So I'm still having the terrible cramps. The worst are the first 2 days of my that I can pretty well manage them with ibuprofen and go about my normal daily activities, but I do have cramps throughout my period.
Yeah.
I start to bleed heavier and also have larger clots. I am having pain now at other times of the month. I wouldn't say that it was daily at this point. It was definitely weekly. I would just get like these random stabbing pains and just thought, I guess everybody has this. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I was also having some bowel symptoms, which again, is why the previous gynecologist said you probably have IBS. I would alternate between bouts of constipation and bouts of diarrhea.
Yeah.
And it didn't really seem to matter what I ate. I noticed a few things might trigger it. But so things are getting worse, definitely not getting better. And at this point, I'm not treating it or have no treatment plan, really.
Right. And at this point, do you also know, like, this is all from endometriosis, or are you thinking some of the random pain and the bowel stuff is a separate issue?
I kind of thought it was a separate issue. I was like, maybe I do have IBS. Maybe it's totally unrelated.
Right.
Maybe these pains that I get, like the stabbing pains in my pelvis, are just random muscle cramps. When you're going through this and nobody has given you an answer, you try to like rationalize things.
Yep.
Like, oh, maybe this is normal, and maybe this is just like a random normal pain, and it's not related to endo, but it all really is.
So that's when you were 20. What's happened in the past couple years?
So during that time period where I kind of gave up on doctors and medications, I made several trips to the emergency room because I just couldn't handle the cramps. If you're having cramps or any type of pelvic pain that is so excruciating that it feels like you can't stand it for one more second, that's not normal.
100%.
And I would love to tell my younger self, don't let people tell you that that's normal.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
Yeah.
So as I would go to the ER, ER doctors would do what they knew how to do, which with endometriosis is not a lot.
Yeah.
I would get a shot of Toradol, which would help. That's the only thing that has ever helped take the pain away.
Agreed. I think I want to pause there for a second and tell people, like, if you do unfortunately have to go to the ER, always request Toradol, because that has helped me so much too. And it's just a high powered,
me too.
That's the only thing. I mean, when they give me the narcotics that just make me loopy, I still am in the pain. I just don't care because I'm loopy, but the Toradol actually reduces the pain. And it's like a high powered ibuprofen, but when you get it through an IV, it's instant, like boom, you can feel
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the only thing that has ever helped me. Like you said, if I've ever taken a narcotic for it, I'm still get those really deep pains and I can still feel them.
Yeah.
But like you said, you're just loopy enough that it doesn't matter as much.
Right. Okay, so what happens next? You're going to the ER, which is super unfortunate, and you're having all this pain, and no one's still really listening to you at this point.
Right. So I decide at age 22 that I need to do something about this. I got married when I was 20, so kind of in the middle of all of this craziness. And I really was not in a good place. I was in pain every day at this point. I had gained weight because I was not as active as I used to be. When I was younger, I loved working out. I have a degree in exercise science. I love being active and healthy, and I know the importance of being active, but like I said, I kind of just like gave up. I was like, I just don't feel good ever. I'm tired all the time. That's probably the biggest symptom that affected me in recent years is the fatigue. I'm just exhausted all the time, no matter what I do. And I work a lot and I love to work a lot. And so that was starting to affect that. So I kind of came to a self-realization that I need to find somebody that can help me.
Yeah.
So I had started posting about endometriosis, even though I had been told I didn't have it. I believed that I did.
Yeah.
So I had started posting on my social media, couple years ago about endo and just sharing some memes and whatnot, some information. And I had a friend send me a message, and she had endo, and I didn't know that previously. And she recommended a doctor about 2 hours away from me that she had seen and who did a lap on her, diagnosed her, and she was happy with the treatment plan. So I made an appointment with that doctor. I drove the 2 hours to be there. I had my first appointment with him, and he said, "You just described every symptom of endometriosis. So let's schedule your surgery today." And I was so thrilled. I thought, finally, this is it. Somebody is going to understand what is going on. So I had the surgery scheduled for a couple weeks after that appointment, and I got a call from their office that said my insurance denied the surgery. And I was just absolutely devastated. This was in June of last year.
Okay.
Absolutely devastated. So I, again, was very upset and not in a great place mentally, because I was just so tired of not feeling well, tired of trying to convince people that something was wrong with me. But I was like, I was this close. I can find somebody who will do it. So I messaged a few people that I knew that worked at hospitals, and I said, "Do you know any doctors that do endometriosis surgeries? Can you give me some names?" So I found one here in a town nearby, and I saw him. And again, at my first appointment, he said, "Do you want to just tell me every symptom of endometriosis? Because that's what you just described." You know, I have my little list there, wrote down like 2 pages of symptoms that I was having.
Well, that's a good point too for everyone who's listening, what Sarah just said. And I always say this if you listen to the podcast, but go in armed. And when I say go in armed, that means you have a list of all the symptoms or a diary of all your pain. So that way you're pushing that across the table and saying, like, something is wrong. Like, this isn't
Exactly.
normal.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I would encourage people to be very specific with that list when you go to the doctor. Like, write down, if you have pain, write down if you notice that it's at certain times of the month. Do you have ovulation pain? Is it only with your period?
Yep.
Do you notice bowel and bladder symptoms after you eat a certain food or whatever? Just be as specific as you can be.
Yep.
And hopefully that will get you closer to answers.
Yeah. So do you schedule a surgery with this doctor?
Yes.
Okay.
So at that day, he said, "Let's schedule it. The earliest I have is September 17th. And I said, "Sounds good to me."
Right. Book it.
Yes. So I had surgery on September 17th, and he did find endometriosis. And getting that diagnosis was, even though I always knew that that's what I had, hearing somebody else tell me that was the most validating thing that I have ever experienced.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's really a downfall of our healthcare system that we have to be cut open before somebody believes that we're not making this pain up. But to have that diagnosis was so validating for me. I was just really happy. I thought, this is the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So, had some weird complications in the recovery room. I reacted badly to one of the pain medications and had to get Narcan because I stopped breathing, and it was kind of a fiasco. But after that, recovery went fairly well. I probably rushed it a little bit because that's what I do. I'm not very patient. Mm-hmm. So I probably went back to work a little soon. But other than that, it went really well. My first period after surgery was like what I assume a normal person's period feels like. It was awesome. It was very mild cramping. I took some ibuprofen and went about my business.
Right.
The next period, was right back to where I was before surgery. And I went through one more after that in November, and it was just terrible again.
Yeah.
With the really deep, excruciating cramps. So I went back to my doctor who did my surgery, and I said, I don't think I can do this for another however many decades until I go through menopause. And he said, I think you need to see a specialist, which I really applaud him for doing that and recognizing that, like, okay, I've done all I know how to do for this girl, and it didn't work. So
at this point,
I need to send her my way.
Yeah, I crazy respect for your doctor for doing that. Like that, good job. I applaud him as well. At this point, do you know the difference between like the type of surgeries that are out there? Have you done any, like the ablation versus excision? Did you find any of that in your research?
So I did more so after my surgery.
Yeah, I feel like that's how it works.
I wish that I would have been a little bit more thorough about that before my surgery, but I was just so elated that someone was going to operate on me that I like kind of lost sight of, okay, what do we need to do once we're in the operating room?
Well, and that's not your fault. You're not a medical professional, and you got what you needed from him. He listened to you. He got you the diagnosis. So you shouldn't feel bad about it. I'm just curious because I know, this is only last year and there's a lot more information now versus even 5 years ago. So that's why I ask.
Yeah, I wish that I would have known more about that. So whenever I had my appointment with him at first, he used the word excise, that he would excise any endometrial lesions that he found.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I'm having excision surgery.
Right.
After reading my post-op notes, he used the word cauterized. Yeah. So I actually had ablation surgery.
Yeah.
So at this point, also before my surgery, I didn't know about adenomyosis. So after my surgery, when I started researching, like, why am I still having such painful periods after I just had surgery for endometriosis, adenomyosis started popping up. So when I went to that appointment in November and told my doctor, look, I'm really struggling with these periods again, I said, how do we know that I don't have adenomyosis? And he said, well, I didn't see anything abnormal. I was in there. And there's really only one way to confirm that. And he did not mention like trying to do an MRI.
Right.
Or anything like that. And that was also at the point where he said, I think you need to see a specialist. So I kind of just moved on from that conversation with him.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say too is like after surgery, usually the first, it's wonderful that your first period was actually okay, but usually the up to 1 to 4 periods after surgery are still painful because you're healing. Like someone was in there all up in your stuff and cutting it or burning it or whatever. So those, for people who are listening, like that, I believe, again, I'm not a medical doctor, but personal experience, I've had how many surgeries? 6 surgeries. And that's happened. But then after that, like definitely made a difference. So to put that caveat in as well.
Right. And I was in limbo, like going back and forth with myself because like I said, that first period was really like normal. I think what a normal period would feel like.
Right.
I don't know, but I think so. And so whenever it went backward, I was really, really discouraged. And my cramps are not like, they feel like contractions. I have to breathe through them.
Yeah.
They come in waves. So, I mean, I could tell dozens of stories of the times where I've just been somewhere out in public and just all of a sudden it's incapacitated.
Yeah.
So when that started happening again, I was just discouraged, and I went back and said to him, I don't think I can handle this right now.
So does he refer you to a specialist at that point?
Not really. He wasn't that helpful about it. He has a doctor in New Jersey that he works with. So he suggested that perhaps I go see that doctor because that's someone he knew. But obviously that was out of network for my insurance. So I did a lot of my own research, and I called my insurance company like 10 million times.
Yeah.
And the customer service reps on the phone, they really are doing their best. But when I would say I need to see an endometriosis specialist, they kept giving me the name of the doctor who just did my surgery, because when they would type endometriosis into their system, he would come up.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
I said, no, you don't understand. He just operated on me and told me I need to go somewhere else.
Right. You're like, so is there anyone else on that list? But it's probably a very limited list, especially if you're in rural Pennsylvania.
It is. And I would like to touch on that really quickly. If you live in a rural area, don't let that discourage you from demanding better care. You might have to travel, but you should be able to find someone in your insurance network, whether it's in Pennsylvania, there's really just Eastern or Western, and whether you have to go to Pittsburgh, or you have to go to like the Harrisburg, Philly, Hershey area. So if you are in a rural area, don't feel like that. It's definitely a roadblock to finding specialized care. But I want to tell people, don't let that discourage you so much that you don't try.
Fully agree. I fully agree. Keep pushing.
Yes.
I live in a non-rural area. I live in a suburban area outside of a major city, and we literally just got a doctor that understood endometriosis 2 years ago.
Wow.
So I've been traveling out of state this whole time as well and fighting with my insurance. So I agree with you. And it is a pain, and it's a lot of calls, and it's almost like a second full-time job just to get the care that you deserve. But I know it's difficult, but you have to keep pushing, because you will get to a place where you need to be. It's just, unfortunately, it is a battle to get there.
Exactly. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can find someone who knows how to deal with your disease and can offer you treatment plans that give you quality of life.
Yeah.
So I found an endo specialist in Hershey, PA. He has been phenomenal.
Good.
I just saw him. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up. Whenever I saw my doctor who did my surgery for that follow-up appointment, and I told him I'm not doing well, he wanted to give me an IUD. And I said, no.
No way.
Thank you, but no.
Goodbye. Thank you, next.
And so he said, well, the only other option to keep you amenorrheic without having a period is the Depo shot. And I said, I tried that once before, and I really wasn't a fan, but I'll try it because I just can't stand this. I can't be in this pain.
Right. How long does the Depo shot last? For 6 months, or how long does it last for?
3 months.
Okay.
So I got the Depo shot in early December.
Okay.
And I have been so fortunate to not have a lot of complications with it or side effects.
Wonderful.
And I have not had a period since November. And it has given me my life back.
Good.
Not having a period.
That's very encouraging to hear.
So I know it's like a little bit of a controversial birth control method. Some people hate it. Yeah. It does make you really hungry. You just kind of have to overcome that to avoid the weight gain. So I was due for a Depo in early March, and I had scheduled an appointment with the specialist in Hershey in mid-March, which was the earliest I could get in, and I called like a bajillion times to ask if they had any openings sooner. Right. They were probably so sick of me.
Did anyone cancel?
Yeah.
But that's another thing
I called at least once a week.
I think, but what Sarah's saying is it's a great tip. Keep calling, keep trying to get on wait lists. Like, again, it's like a second job, but you have to battle your way to get the treatment you want.
It really is. And don't be embarrassed. Like, don't be embarrassed to call 10 times and say, did anything open up? Like, I'm in pain over here. I need to see somebody. You don't have to apologize for being tenacious because you want the care you deserve.
Yeah. So did you not get the shot?
I had to overcome that a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard. Did you
It is.
skip the shot in March, or did you get it?
So I called down to the specialist office and I said, what do you think I should do? And they said, well, we can't, he's not going to give you a recommendation because he hasn't seen you.
Makes sense.
So I decided to go ahead. I decided to go ahead and get it. I figured it shouldn't get in the way of anything he wants to do. And if it does, we'll have to wait a couple months, which I'm not having a period, so I can deal with that.
Yeah.
So I was so lucky to get in there like right before all of the COVID stuff happened and they started canceling appointments.
Yeah. You made the right, made the right decision for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So I made the 3-hour trip down to Hershey, and the doctor was just wonderful. Wonderful. My husband went with me. He came in the room and he was very, very personable, which I was so nervous. Like, I don't have like white coat syndrome or anything, but I was just nervous because I'm like, I have been doing this so long and this feels like it's finally going to be the light at the end of the tunnel. And what if it's not?
Yeah.
So he was just very reassuring. He took a lot of time to just sit and go through my questions. And he didn't insist that I get a pelvic exam because he knew it was going to be painful and we wouldn't learn anything we didn't already know. So I said to him, like, what do we do? What's the plan? Yeah. And he said that right now, until I'm ready to try to have children, the goal is to keep me amenorrheic. Just because that is what gives me quality of life. When I was having my period, I had maybe one good week a month that I could like feel like I could function. Yeah. From the time I ovulated to the time my period was over, I was just a mess. So he said, let's keep you amenorrheic. If the Depo is working for you, let's not change it. And I said, that's fine with me. Now, I have been, the past 2 times I've gotten the Depo, I start to have some bleeding at about 8 weeks into it, when it's supposed to last 12 weeks. So this past time, it got pretty bad, and I thought I was actually having a period. Like, I was starting to get cramping, bleeding heavier. So I freaked out a little bit. Yeah. And because I haven't had a period in months, and I thought, oh my God, like, I can't even imagine what this is going to be like. Right. So, the doctor's office did give me some advice to take kind of round the clock low dose ibuprofen and Tylenol together to control that. And he did allow me to bump my shot up to 10 weeks instead of 12. So, I did that. I got the Depo again. He said, we'll see how this round goes because this will be my 3rd full round of the Depo. Yep. And if that happens again, if I'm spotting and having period-like symptoms at the end, then we will try something else, whether that's him going in and doing a full excision. He suggested that if we go that route, he will implant an IUD while I'm under. And I'm open to that idea. He said that someone with a painful uterus like me, putting an IUD in while they're awake is just a recipe for disaster. So I was very adamant about the issues that I had with that before and said I don't want to do that again. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where you're at. That's where I'm at. He did recommend that I try, which I haven't touched on this yet, do a strict paleo diet for 30 days at least. He said that is the most effective diet in reducing inflammation in your gut and your abdominopelvic area. Because I was still having some bladder issues. When I say that, I'll elaborate a little bit for maybe people who are beginning their journey, like urgency, frequency, urinating and standing up and feeling like you still have to go. All of those things he explained is because my nerves are in constant flare mode.
Yeah.
They've basically been irritated and angry for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
So he did recommend a strict paleo diet to try to quiet those. And I am over 30 days into that, and I'm actually loving it. It definitely takes some planning and some discipline to stick to. I am not a healthy eater by nature. I love like a good cheesesteak and French fries. So
I mean, you kind of have to. You live in Pennsylvania.
Exactly.
It's part of living there. You have to like that.
And in rural central PA, healthy food choices are not
it's difficult.
all that common. Yeah, which is unfortunate. And that is changing a little bit. I mean, as we progress here, there's definitely been more options than there used to be. But that's been a real game changer for me. Like I said, it does take a lot of discipline and it takes a lot of planning. And I do love to cook, so that hasn't been an issue for me. I've been kind of having fun figuring out like new recipes and stuff. But it has just helped me tremendously as far as my fatigue, as far as my bowel and bladder issues. My skin is clearer than it's ever been. I've lost some weight, and I've been able to exercise again. I have enough energy and I have a low enough pain level that I can exercise. So it's just been really good for me. That's all around.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear. I'm so happy to hear that you're finding solutions that work for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It
has been a
journey,
decade-long saga.
Yeah, for sure. But you're on a really good path, and you have a doctor that you can go to and talk to, and you have that resource now too, which I'm sure brings a lot of peace to you on a day-to-day basis.
It really does. It's so comforting to know that. I have I can send him a message online, and I had sent him a message a little while after my first appointment and said, hey, I just thought of a couple things I forgot to ask you. Like, he said he doesn't prescribe his patients Depo, and I wanted to know what the reason for that was. His reasoning was because of the weight gain. A lot of patients get upset with him, thinking that he kind of set them up for failure with that, so he tends to go a different route.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. But anyway, I had sent him a message just asking a couple questions. And I didn't get a response for like a week, and I thought, it's nothing, it's no big deal, it's not urgent. Maybe he just didn't get to it. And so he called me one evening and said, I think I forgot to respond to one of your messages, and I apologize for that. And we had like an hour-long conversation touching on every one of my questions, and even some that I didn't message him that came up in the conversation. And when I hung up, I was in tears because I waited 10 years to have somebody treat me like that.
Yeah.
Every other doctor I ever saw was, here's this pill and see you later.
Yeah.
And he really just followed up on the diet aspect and being active. And that's so important. Like, if you do find, I'm well aware that the Depo is not treating my endometriosis. It's merely managing my symptoms and the symptoms of my adenomyosis, because my periods are just so incredibly painful. So I'm well aware that it's not treating them, but the fact that I've been able to manage that pain and restore a quality of life has truly just been life-changing in the past few months. I feel better than I have felt in years.
Just everything you're saying is very inspiring and very hopeful. And I like literally can't be happier for you right now. And I'm And I'm so happy that you're sharing this, because everyone's journey is so different. And I say it all the time, but this is a different point of view that we haven't had on the podcast. And I think it's important for people to hear.
It is. And everybody's journey is different. And so I don't want to say that like, I know the Depo isn't going to work for everybody.
Right.
But I do want to say that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Yes. If you keep fighting and keep persisting, as annoying and discouraging as it can be,
yes,
eventually you can fight to find a doctor who really understands the disease and who can put together a treatment plan that's going to work for you. And like, my treatment plan is not forever right now. That'll change as I get older. If we decide we want to try to have children, that's all going to change. But I have peace knowing that I have a doctor who will walk me through that, and I'm not going to be back to square one.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sarah. I mean, really, this has been very impactful. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
I think that I just want to say to anybody who is struggling with endo or adeno or any chronic illness, really, especially if you're at the beginning of your journey, it's going to be hard, but you can find quality of life. You can find joy. You can find ways to manage the impact that it has on every aspect of your life. And taking care of yourself is such an important part of that, whether that's through diet or exercise or taking a rest day. You don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to do everything for everyone. Sometimes you have to put yourself first, and also give yourself a little bit of grace if you're going through a rough time. Like I said, I went through a several year period of time that I was just not in a good place, and I'm okay with that. And I'm glad I did, because I really think I went through a grieving process.
Absolutely.
Of a normal life, and thinking, is this what my life is now? But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be what your life is, because you can find something that will work for you.
Yep. I agree 100%.
Can I just say something? One last thing. I actually just started a blog that is called Happy and Unwell. So it's at happyandunwell.com. I'm not selling anything or giving any medical advice. It's just a place to share some lessons and experiences that I've learned over the past going on 11 years now. Things like advocating for yourself, and just some lessons that I've learned of life with chronic illness. And I would love to share that with other people in hopes that it would help them or encourage them.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely put that in the notes below. Just send me an email with a link, and we'll link it out. Where can people find you besides there? Is there anywhere else? Do you want to share your social media or anything?
Yeah. So I actually created a social media for the blog on Facebook and Instagram. Both of them are Happy and Unwell, all one word. And again, this is very new for me. So
Sure.
Just bear with me, and I hope that it grows, and I hope that it reaches people. I really just want to be an encouragement and tell people what I wish I would have known 10 years ago. So you can follow me on there, and my personal Instagram is Sarah A. Kopas. That's Kopas, and Sarah with an H. And there I just share a lot of pictures of my dogs and flowers. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. We really appreciate you sharing this with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.